Hi, my name is Susan Pitzele. I'm 82, and my husband Peter and I started a group called Graceful Aging a number of years ago in Florida, and then we started one up here in the Hudson Valley where we live, Hudson Valley of New York. And once COVID happened, we stopped being snowbirds and we had to leave behind our Florida group, and now we're just running a group up here in the mid-Hudson Valley. So Graceful Aging is for anybody who wants to come dealing with issues of aging, and it's a group where we share. We don't give advice. We do a lot of listening and a lot of support. And we meet, in our group, we meet for an hour and a half. And we start with a check-in at the beginning of the group to make sure everybody's heard from. And then usually a topic emerges. Sometimes someone will bring something that they want to talk about in particular. But often, by the time we go around, some topic has really emerged as the topic. It's like this person says something and this one says, yeah, well, that's going on in my life too. And it just builds. It's about sharing, being heard, and particularly it's about listening and letting yourself be affected by what you hear.
What have you been learning through your aging process that you think could be useful to others as they age or at any age?
Mm-hmm. I would say the biggest theme is letting go. And man, I'm getting much better at it. Letting go, letting go, letting go. I sort of knew in my mind at a certain point that the next however many years of my life was going to be about letting go of things. Because, of course, we all die, so we all have to let go of everything eventually. And I wish I had understood the joy in that and the lightness in that, because I would say that I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And the more I let go of stuff, the happier I am, the more joyful I am, the more I appreciate everything around me. And the only way I learned that was by actually letting go. Knowing about letting go is really different than letting go. And as I actually let go more and more and more, it's like, wow, this is like a miracle. I am so much happier. And so there's a lot more laughter in my life. And they talk about older people having a second childhood, meaning they kind of lose their marbles. But what I'm having is like, I feel like I'm having a second childhood, and then I'm becoming more and more like I was as a child. More in wonder, more in appreciation, more in I guess spiritual energy. I hate to use the word spiritual because it's got so much stuff attached to it, but as opposed to physical energy. I may not have as much physical energy. I may have to take a nap because I get tired more easily, but I have more, just more basic, bubbly energy inside of me than I've had in a long time.
to talking about the Graceful Aging group,
Mm-hmm.
if you were to name 6 themes.
6 themes.
Yeah,
Wow.
it could be 4, it could be 10, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
big chunk, big,
Yeah. Well,
what would
I'm
be
a person who sees how things are the same and similar, so I tend to chunk down to very simple and very small and very few. So, like I said, letting go is a, to me, the theme of the group. But letting go of not being able to do what you used to be able to do physically, mentally, letting go of the judgments about the way you're aging. One of the things I really like when you get together with a bunch of elderly people is when someone says, "Oh, I forgot," everybody laughs. You know, it's like 10 years ago, we weren't laughing at that. But now we're laughing. It's like, oh yeah, well, it's gone. and it's a chuckle. So humor, being able to sort of laugh at yourself. Isolation, I mentioned earlier. And being invisible is really interesting because it's different for men and women. A lot of the men are very concerned with being seen. And a lot of the women are really glad to be invisible. It's like, I can just go about my life now and nobody's paying any attention to me anymore. I don't have to get pretty for anybody. I don't have to, like, nobody's commenting on how I look or how I'm. It's like, it's really liberating. It's like you're not there sometimes, and it's like, so there's a certain freedom in it. But it's it's both sides of that, being invisible as an older person. Being written off as like, what you say is not so important because you're an old person. Yeah. You can edit this out if you want, but when I read what's going on now about what people are saying about Biden, saying, so what if he uses the wrong word by accident? You understand what it is he's trying to say. Pay attention to what he's saying and not whether he flubs the particular word. That's got nothing to do with how competent his thinking is or anything. Not that it's not a sign that he's aging and losing certain, functions. But I think people overvalue verbal repartee and undervalue wisdom. So I think about that when I read the news.
I'm going to run by you a few of the themes that Dad and I came up with.
Okay.
This is a brainstorm.
Yeah.
So it's for refinement. And maybe you can speak on the different themes.
Okay.
Some of which you've already spoken on. Power of the past, regrets, things we wish we had done or known.
Well, the past is always informing the present. And it keeps popping up, in one way or another. I mean, like we talked about asking for help. In some families, you just learn not to ask for help, you know. And that's a very old learning from the past that it's good to unlearn. Mistakes from the past. I've always liked learning, and so if I'm learning, then they're not mistakes. When I get to a certain point, I let go of the judgment about how I was in the past, and I grab hold of the learning and the growing, and I start seeing, wow, look at how different I am from the way I used to be, and that's a plus, rather than, oh my God, I'm doing it again. This comes up in relation to the puppy a lot, because when he's being difficult, I can get really angry with him. And what happens when I'm angry with him is he misbehaves more. If I can stay loving with him, he behaves better. And so I've got a built-in meter in my house right now that tells me how well I'm doing at letting go of being pissed off at him and holding on to what's wonderful about him. And I can see how I'm getting better and better at being matter of fact when he does something, rather than angry when he does something. It's like he bites me, it's like, as opposed to no. And I'm more and more on the side. And that's just a very local example of it, but that's, to me, what this whole process is about, is like accepting and valuing what's happened in the past and learning from it, and not spending a lot of time there.
So, and you can answer these about yourself as you just did, or about how they apply kind of to the group conceptually.
Yeah.
Either way, any way you want to answer it.
Okay.
Another one is mobility, adapting your lifestyle and environment proactively.
Okay. Well, mobility for me, I've kind of always, or for a very long time, thought ahead about mobility and aging. I lived in a 3-story house, and we had to renovate the bathroom on the first floor. We renovated it so that we could use a wheelchair in it. And that's because we took care of my father-in-law in his last days. So that was like, let's make this bathroom so that if we're still in this house, we can have a bedroom on the first floor, and we can be wheeled into the bathroom if need be. So in my own life, I've always sort of thought about that. But those are issues. It's like someone has trouble going up and down her steps because they're a little too steep. And if she's focused on these steps that are too steep for me, and I'm getting old and it's getting difficult, and then she's not going to think about solutions to make it easier. And it may be that the steps can be made so the riser's not quite as high and the step is deeper, so you don't have to worry about hitting the step right. It's like just a couple of inches less rise makes a huge difference on stepping up and down and your feeling of security going up and down the stairs. When people are downsizing is a big issue that people have talked about. Living in a house they've lived in for 30, 40 years, and they've got all this stuff that they got to get rid of. And they're looking for a one floor so they don't have to go up and down stairs. And looking for a place that's easier to take care of, but has enough space to put their stuff in. Then you're into letting go. What stuff can you let go of, and what's important and what isn't? And sometimes it's silly stuff that's important. So that's, when I think of mobility, I'm thinking about people going, into homes that have wider doorways and more ease in getting around should you need a walker or a wheelchair. But it's also important to be able to have a place to put your things that you can't part with yet.
That touches on one of the other themes here called pruning.
Pruning, yeah.
And we said returning to our history and our possessions, valuing and letting go.
Yes, yeah. Well, I've done a lot of moving in my life. So, and I come from a family of hoarders. That you keep everything because it might be useful someday. And I've had to learn to let go because I'm married to a guy who just lets go of stuff really easily. And so I've gotten pretty good at it. I got a lot of artwork in my house, and I don't want my house to feel crammed and chaotic and full of stuff. I want a open, easy feeling. So I have to get rid of things in order to do that. And it's forced me to make choices about what's really important and what isn't. And some of the things, some of the artwork in particular, it's not because it's good, but it's because it means something. Like we've got a little painting like this. It's on a cigar box, and it's a painting of a man that we took class with, an art class with, done by one of the other students. So it's a connection to the student, it's a connection to the teacher, and it's a connection to our time that we spent in that class. It's like, that's going to be one of the last things to go. It's not a particularly wonderful painting. I've got a painting that a friend of mine did in Mexico, and it's not a particularly good painting, but every time I look at it, I smile. So that goes with me because it makes me smile every time I see it. We got a couple of paintings that actually have some value, and they'll go way before these other ones will. If I have to move into one room, then the little ones that have meaning are going to last more than the really good paintings. You can see I seem to be more interested in psychological and spiritual issues than practical issues, but that's partly because I'm such a practical person, and I'm learning not to be so practical. Not to try to solve all the problems and have everything lined up ahead of time, so that I can live more in the moment, be more alive, be more flexible in my responses, and be able to let go better. than if I'm busy planning my life out.
Another topic is fun, and what gives you amusement, enjoyment, or joy.
And laughing at myself is my biggest source of fun these days. And we have a puppy, which, some shelters you couldn't adopt a puppy at our age, so, or a dog at our age. So we wound up with a puppy, which we were not expecting, but that's a great source of laughter and joy and exhaustion, and keeps me too busy to worry about the little stuff that I could be worrying about if my life wasn't being so challenged by this being that is always, always, always in the present. So it's nice to have something that's challenging you in your life, as long as it's not too much.
Awareness of death. Practical preparations, legal and medical, experiential, imagining the dying process. Who, where, who is there, sense of what happens during and after the death experience, and the experience of thinking about it.
Okay, so one of the things I would like to see happen with our group and in the future is that it would be a model for groups that could happen in other communities. And so, for instance, I was reading an article about some aging issue this morning. Can't even remember what it is anymore. But I thought, boy, this has got a lot of information about where to get help for this, that, and the other problem. And it's like, I'm going to start like a file on my computer of articles like this that I've read, so that if people need help in a particular area, I can send them this article. And I would like to Graceful Aging Group to be a source of information. Or how do you deal with things like your husband needs to go into a nursing home and you don't have the insurance you need? Where do you even begin to figure out a problem like that when you're grieving about what's happening to him and, trying to juggle financial information, emotional information, practical information? It's interesting that in our conversations, there doesn't seem to be a lot of worry about dying. It's about death. It's about dying. How people are going to die. Are they going to be in pain? Are they going to, how are they going to live between now and then is more what people are looking at. And so we haven't been talking too much about the practical things of getting wills and that, but I think that needs to be part of it. We need to really have a way of, when someone comes into the group and they know they need to do this and that and the other thing, we can point them in the direction. But, like, it would be nice to have in our group a social worker and a lawyer and a doctor and who are all dealing with aging and know something about their particular fields. That would be a really nice mix to have, so that we have resources that
vulnerability. acknowledging vulnerability to yourself and others, asking for help.
Mm. Asking for help is a big theme because it's hard for people to do. Really hard for people to do. And I think especially in our age group, we were raised to be independent and do things on our own. Just sharing with other people in a group makes it easier to ask for help. Because if you're listening to someone else who's not asking for help, it's really obvious that they should be asking for help. And when you see that, it begins to sink in that, yeah, I can ask for help also. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. If she can do it, and I know that it's okay for her to, then why wouldn't it be okay for me to? So that's one of the things, that's one of the values of the group. But asking for help, and what else did you there was some, vulnerability. Well, I talked before about using you versus using I. You can say the same thing, and if you use I, you're automatically more vulnerable. I am automatically more vulnerable when I say I. You hear the difference? And I just said it the two different ways, and it's I hear the difference and I feel the difference. Yeah. We had one week where a man came early and he talked about housing issues, having to move, and he was in tears telling us. As soon as the group came, he wasn't quite as vulnerable. Told us all the same information, but he wasn't in tears anymore. So it's much harder, depending on how big a group gets. If it's small enough, we get more tears. As it gets larger, people get a little more protected. And finding the right size group and the right I don't even know how to say it. Maybe the right kind of support so that people can be vulnerable but not disempowered by their vulnerability. We want people to be able to be empowered by being vulnerable. And that's sort of the aim for me of the group is keeping people vulnerable enough that they can get what they really need and can't get other places, but empowered, feeling empowered by that. I'm just kind of repeating myself. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Relationships, family, birth family, chosen family, friendships, sense of community and connection, what you can and can't offer, lifeboats, who matters, who nourishes you.
Oh my goodness. Well, I can say that my family has just improved tremendously in the last couple of years since I've been growing up better myself. The things that used to bother me about people in my family don't bother me anymore. And the importance of family becomes more obvious the older I get. And the unimportance of accomplishing something in the world is more obvious. My favorite day of the week is the day that my husband and I stay home and turn off our phones and our computers and hang out together. I feel like I'm understanding what home means more and more as I get older. And I understand people who want to die in their home and don't want to go into a nursing home or don't want to go into a hospital. I totally understand that. And I hope I'll be healthy enough to do that. If not, I hope I'll be able to let go of my annoyance at not being able to be in my home. I hope you get enough stuff out of this.
Oh my gosh, so much stuff. Are you kidding?
I'm not feeling very inspired somehow, so.
Oh well, you're inspiring me.
Oh, good. Okay.
So this one sounds very dad, but I'll give it to you. Generativity. New avenues for engaging your heart and mind. Sense of purpose in life.
I've never really related very well to sense of purpose in life, and maybe it's because I didn't really feel like I had much choice about purpose in life when I was younger, and I was just doing what was expected of me. A typical woman of the 50s, growing up in the 50s, I was like, I was going to grow up and get married and have children. It's like the picture didn't go beyond that, you know? And
I think this
but
also includes like new avenues for engaging your heart and mind, though.
yeah, right. Well, being interested in starting a group like this, I'm involved in a 12-step group. I'm much more interested in being with people in a helpful way that contributes to their life than I used to be. And much more understanding that what I have to give is who I am personally, and I'm more willing to share what's really going on with me than I used to be. And that's partly because I'm more confident and more accepting of who I am, and I don't feel like I have things to hide. But it's also that I understand that really helps other people. And so there's certain reading my energy and my interest and enthusiasm for something is way more important than it used to be. Like, I did things because, like I said, I was expected to do them and stuff. But now I'm really understanding the importance of doing what excites me or what brings me joy more. And that when I do that, I bring more life to the world. And I understand how that works better than I used to. So, I don't, yes, this is the age of generativity, but I don't think about serving. I just think about, I'd like to be around people who are being open and honest and talking about what's really going on in their lives. So, that's where I put my energy.
Very connected to this last one, which is selective engagement. Tuning in versus tuning out. Technology, current events, cultural changes.
Ugh. A few years ago, I was reading several articles in the paper every day, and now I'm like, zip, zip, zip through the headlines. It's like, it's opinion, it's argument, it's negative guessing about the future. It's like, it's a total waste of my time. If I've got this many years left, do I want to spend it listening to people complain about what they think is going to happen in the world? No. It's like, I would rather notice the way the rain looks on the screen of my window, or the way when I look through my water bottle, things look upside down and backwards, compared to looking where the water is in the water bottle, as opposed to the top of the water bottle where there's no water. I would rather spend more time looking at things like that, seeing the bugs, seeing the nature, life around me. Hugging my neighbor who's just trying to figure out how to deal with losing her husband little by little by little to dementia. That feeds my soul. And by letting that feed my soul, it feeds her soul.
Will you tell me a little bit about why you and Peter started the Graceful Aging Group?
Well, originally we were in Florida and we belonged to a UU church, and we were wanting to do something to sort of serve people in the church, and most churches these days are more old people than young people, and particularly in Florida, where so it was a way of getting to know people in the church, serving the church, doing something we were already doing, trying to figure out how to age gracefully. So that's what got us started.
And what was the reception?
It was interesting down there because I think because it was in a church, people were a little more sort of talking on the surface. They were not as open about what was going on in their lives personally as the people up here were. And I think that's why. I think it was like, this is a social setting and they're used to being at a certain level of intimacy in a social setting, and this was aimed a little bit lower, but some people went there right away, and some people just had to make a lot of jokes and weren't taking it seriously. So it was a little different there than it has evolved up here in New York, in Hudson Valley. Did I say that?
Would you talk a little bit about the kind of intimacy that is necessary or possible in a graceful aging group, or beneficial?
Well, once people understand that they're there really to listen and to be listened to, not to fix each other's problems unless asked, people become more vulnerable. Tears are shed sometimes. And everybody has a different way of expressing themselves. Like, some people kind of explode in the door and just go, and then other people really need a lot of time to come up with what it is that's going on and to get down to the level that they want to share at. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, because I don't remember the question.
So how would you describe the graceful aging group if you were explaining it to someone who'd never heard of it before.
Okay. So it's really a support group. I mean, some people think it's like a therapy group, but that's really wrong. It's like therapy. Feelings and therapy seem to have gotten hooked up together in our culture, and it's like people have feelings, and it's really nice to be with a group of people who understand because they've been there, and they're not afraid of your feelings. We have a fair number of widows who come, and they're adjusting to life by themselves. Like, what is it like to be a single person after being married for years and years and years? And how do you deal with the isolation when you're a single person? So I'm sort of going into some of the things that we talk about. But a couple of weeks ago, we were meeting in a place that had a very noisy fan, and everyone was having trouble hearing because of the acoustics in that room. But I looked around the table, and I was the only person that didn't have a hearing aid on. So I was having trouble. They must have been having way more trouble. And we talked a lot about hearing aids in that meeting, and how it's perfectly normal for people to wear glasses. Nobody thinks a second time about someone wearing glasses. But people, as they get older, avoid getting hearing aids because it means they're old and they're falling apart and they're not who they used to be, and it's sort of got all these things attached to it that don't belong there. And so we talked a lot about that and how hard it was for some of them to make the step to get hearing aids, and how, these are things you don't talk to people about normally in your life. And therefore you're kind of stuck alone with them a lot. So these are the kinds of things we talk about.
So one thought that I have is that, or that we've all had, I think, is that, we could do a video like this about each member of the core Graceful Aging group.
Mm-hmm.
And then, decide which of the, I shared 8 or 10 themes with you, and you've named a bunch more. We can decide which of those make sense after we have all of those in a way.
Yeah.
And then pull together a shortish chapter
Mm-hmm.
about each.
Mm-hmm.
Isolation.
Yeah.
With like a couple paragraphs describing, summarizing themes, and then maybe some little quotes.
Mm-hmm.
A little similar to an Al-Anon book, actually.
Yeah.
Some quotes from different people about that topic.
Yeah.
And then maybe some facilitation questions.
Uh-huh.
And that it would have, a slim volume.
Yeah.
That would have facilitation questions, and then perhaps a guide to facilitation. And perhaps these videos would be available as well.
Uh-huh.
So that there could be like all these entry points. There might be some ways for elders to connect, like a social media space or something connected to it, or a Zoom. Someone wants to make a Zoom Graceful Aging because they don't have people nearby, or
I often hear from people that, are you doing this on Zoom? Can I join?
Yeah.
I've got friends in Florida who want to come to the group up here.
Yeah.
By Zoom, and so there are all these possibilities for sure. I think Zoom meetings would be great, and I participate in a Zoom meeting that's not Graceful Aging, that is a support group for people over 70. So it's similar. It's similar, and that is a group that's all over the world. So what's really wonderful about that is I'm listening to firsthand information from a woman in Israel who has spent a lot of time working with Palestinian women to try to bring peace. And what's it been like for her to go through this crisis? and what was it like to be out of touch with her Palestinian friends and then back in touch with them. So a Zoom group that's worldwide has way richer world, to pull on, and I think that'd be great.
And if we were able to make a bit of a guidebook to it,
Yeah.
it could take a life of its own.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say take its own life. That didn't make sense.
No. Yeah. Yeah. I hope that we can set up just, sort of basic structure that people can then grab hold of and play with and use their own creativity to expand and all. But I'm not very interested in doing the work.
Right. But I think some of the things you said for facilitation guidelines were great.
Yeah.
You even dropped a few of them along here, like using I statements, not solving other people's problems.
Yeah.
Those are two really big ones.
Yeah.
And then tending to the size of the group, I also heard you say that like it's there's a magical size.
Right. If it gets too big, then people start being much more formal and much more pulled back.
Yeah, and and then if it's on Zoom, it might be a different size, but you might need to have like some time limits for talks, or timekeeper, or whatever. But are there any other, like, what else would you put in a chapter on facilitating groups like this? What are some of your other go-to for someone who's never facilitated a group before?
Yeah, the less experience you have facilitating a group, the more structure is important. Like a structured check-in. So everybody gets a minute to just say what's going on in their life. So that you hear from people, and the people who are shy don't get left out. Or maybe someone's in the middle of a crisis and they need to sort of screw up their courage to talk about it, and somebody else speaks fairly easily, and they're going on and on and on about something in their life that they would be happy to drop if they knew this person over here was in a crisis. So you need ways of making sure that you find out those things early enough in a group that you can deal with them. It's nice to have two leaders, because if one leader's sort of leading, doing something active in the group, the other person can be watching reactions and is more likely to notice the person who's not speaking up and saying, wait a minute, can we hear from Joan, or whatever. So if you're new to facilitating, having a co-facilitator is really helpful. Building trust, and being willing to be vulnerable yourself makes people feel much safer than if you're the expert leading the group. So,
What are some of the questions that you think would be good for me to ask you to explore this topic together?
Well, maybe I've spoken mostly about people getting older, but we don't have any age limit. Never have. So anyone who feels like they're dealing with getting older, they could be 40, they could be 80, it doesn't matter.
If you were conducting this interview, what questions might you ask? Or are there any questions you wished that I might ask?
Well, I'm kind of thinking of questions and then giving you the answer instead of giving you
Yeah,
the question.
I had to deduce the previous question. I think it was who qualifies.
Yeah, yeah. And so the next question would be, along with age qualification, would be sort of religious or political or, that kind of affiliation. And everybody is welcome. It's like you don't have to believe in anything or not believe in anything, or and we pretty much stay off the topic of politics. And yeah, and try to encourage people to speak in the first person. I don't know, people say, you this, you that. This is the way people often speak, and it's weird when you've been speaking that way your whole life to start saying I. And some people have a hard time with making that shift, but it makes such a huge difference. Even like if someone in the group brings up a subject and then someone else responds and they think they're talking about themselves but they're saying you, then it's really easy for the person who's being responded to think that that person's talking about them. So those are the kinds of things that we try to clear up in the group, and as much as possible have people talk about themselves and not give us suggestions, because we're we're a bunch of experienced, mostly fairly successful people in life, and we can figure these things out. We just want support and loving understanding. And it helps a lot to know that you're not the only one that was embarrassed about the idea of hearing aids, or you're not the only one who thinks there's something wrong with you because you're feeling so isolated, or you don't know how to go out and make friends in a new community, or whatever the issue is. It just makes a big difference to not be alone with it, which I guess I've said it several times now.
It's important. It's one of the themes, I think.
It's the major thing. One of major themes.
How has the Graceful Aging group been helpful to you personally?
I think the way it's been the most helpful to me has been in helping me to be more grateful for how lucky I am, how healthy I am, how little I personally have had to deal with really difficult aging issues. It's like people don't usually think I'm as old as I am, and I don't move like an old lady. Well, mostly, except in the mornings. And, I don't have any of those, as far as I know, any of those illnesses that people get as they get older. And so, hearing what other people are dealing with has helped me to be grateful and to recognize that it's been a little easier for me to be graceful because I haven't had really hard issues to deal with. So it keeps reminding me that, hey, it's a lot easier to be graceful when you're healthy and your spouse is healthy. So I think that's the most important thing I've gotten out of the group. That and recognizing how much I've grown up since I was young.
What do you wish your younger self had known about aging?
Well, it's interesting because there's what you know up here, and there's what you know in your heart and your behavior. I always knew it was important to take care of yourself up here, but I wish I'd known it in my heart better. I wish I'd taken better care of myself when I was younger than I did. And I think I did a pretty good job, and that I was particularly lucky as a child to have had the childhood I had. Because I spent a lot of my time outdoors. I was active as a kid, and so that gave me a pretty reliable body to begin with. I wish, well, if you go in, I don't know how to say this. I wish I'd been more accepting of myself and others when I was younger. I wish I'd known how important that is and how much it changes your life. That, of course, is one of the advantages to listening to other people as well. It's like you might someone might come into a group and you make kind of a snap decision about whether you like them or not. We all do this, we don't always admit it, but we all do it. And then if you really listen to somebody, someone who you thought you weren't going to like turns out to be someone who you really like. So I think that's one of the advantages in the group also. It's made me more accepting and more open-hearted whenever I'm in a group where I'm listening to other people.
Tell me what graceful aging means to you.
Well, this Graceful Aging, the group that we started, and there's graceful aging in my life. And graceful aging in my life, for me, means letting go, letting go, letting go. Letting things be the way they are, not fighting them, not trying to fix them, not trying to cure them, but living with them as gracefully as I can as I get older. And that's what I want to bring, that's what I bring to the group, is that perspective. And I want to help people begin to take that perspective instead of fighting aging or being afraid of aging, because it's really quite a wonderful adventure and kind of a glorious time of life, actually, if you don't fight it.